audience. Before we get started, I'd like to start by familiarizing everyone with Zoom's chat function. All participants will be muted for the duration of this webinar and are asked to participate via chat. You can find the button by bringing your cursor to the bottom of your screen and clicking chat. This will open a window and allow you to type any questions or comments you may have. Let's get going. In today's webinar, we will be presenting our expert panelists with a few questions. Each question will be allotted 5 minutes for responses. Throughout this process, we'll be taking questions from our webinar audience via Twitter and Zoom. To address them, we will devote 15 minutes at the end of the session for open Q&A. Following the Q&A, we'll finish our session with 5 minutes of closing remarks and provide you with links to all the resources mentioned in today's webinar. Let's get started. I'm your host, Christine Bundy, Chamber Success Coach at Member 365. I'm joined by Michael Hughes, former chair of the Ottawa Chamber of Commerce. He has 45 years of business experience, founder of Michael J. Hughes Consulting and Training Incorporated, and expert corporate relations strategist and networking for results. We're also joined by Brady Williams, who has 16 years of experience providing technology solutions to a range of professional organizations and 2 years experience working with Chamber of Commerce at Member 365. So thank you both for joining us today.
You're welcome. Good to be here.
Happy to be here, Christine.
So for our first question, the Chamber of Commerce the Chamber of Commerce is an idea born over 400 years ago. As the voice of business throughout history, it has changed as the world has evolved. Today, the business world changes more in a year than it once did in generations. And tomorrow, it can only expect to change even faster. What do you think the Chamber of Commerce looks like 10 years into the future? Michael, would you like to start off this question?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And you know, it's an interesting conundrum that chambers are in today with respect to the future and what it holds. And you know, there's lots of stuff going on. I mean, there's intense pressure from a number of areas, one being declining memberships, another one being, you know, increased cost area and cost constraints. There's changing demographics. Everybody's looking at specifically the whole millennial issue and the technology factor. I think there's 4 quick pieces here that are going to impact chambers. So if I look ahead 10 years, here's what I see. First of all, I see chambers of commerce as being much more entrepreneurial. What I mean by that is I see chambers much more focused on being a business and running their chambers as a business. And that's not only from the operational perspective of a profitability factor, but it's also having to do with their value premise. In other words, how they come to the marketplace, the services they offer, and the different services they offer. I think chambers are going to have to look more specifically at who they are, what they do, who they do it for, and expand their thinking about the services they offer, whether it's training, whether it's partnerships, whatever it is. The second piece is one of the things I think is core to the chamber, a cornerstone of the chamber that I think will not change but needs to be more focused. And that's thought leadership. The chamber is a vehicle to bring to the marketplace, specifically their members, thought leadership. And yes, I'm talking about events, but I'm talking about looking at events from a deeper prism where the chamber looks at events from a perspective of bringing important information to members and to people in the marketplace. Third one I have here is connectivity, and that's directly related to the whole millennial issue, because the chamber by its very nature brings people together, and I think that's going to continue, and I think the chamber is well positioned to do that. At the same time, I think that connectivity is going to change, because I think the advent of technology and everything it's bringing, and especially the new mentality that millennials are bringing to the marketplace, means that we're going to be looking at that connectivity, that networking, if you will, from a more focused, a more individual, and a more intense perspective. Whether it's smaller groups who come together on a particular topic, whether it's using technology to drive the process, small clusters of members who want to get together on different topics. I see that being huge. And then the last piece I have is I think one of the important factors of a chamber, which is its advocacy role, and I see that remaining as a cornerstone of chamber success. But at the same time, I see that advocacy, that collective action, as an advocate for collective action, expanding from not only business policy, but really expanding into the community, where the chamber becomes a voice for the community as much as for business. So those are the four pieces I see that are going to impact a chamber 10 years down the road, Christine.
You know what, Michael, I'll agree actually with you on most of your points. And in fact, as you said, the chamber needs to look more like a business in the next 10 years. And to that point, quality talent is going to be one of the key metrics. You mentioned events, and you know what? It's one thing to run an event. There's a huge differentiator, though, between someone who can identify opportunities between different businesses and take action to connect them. So networking and connecting businesses is certainly going to be huge. It all ties back into belonging and gathering. You know, the chamber today is all around belonging and gathering, a sense of belonging in that group. And really the change is in person compared to an online membership or an online community. You know, we look at Facebook and LinkedIn, and that's certainly where we see it. So I absolutely agree with you, and certainly if a pivot isn't made, the chambers are at risk if nothing is done. So absolutely.
Thank you. So the chambers are born in a time of business before BlackBerries. Millennials don't remember the world without Facebook. What are chambers doing to bridge the generational gap, and what could they be doing better?
I'll kick this off, actually. I don't think today chambers in general are doing enough. There are certainly ones that are, but the majority aren't. I think everyone needs to embrace the progression and be part of it. What I mean by progression is everyone's expecting information in the now. They're expecting it for free. They're expecting to receive lots of value back. So we need to be sure that we're the information gateway of all the members, right? Have that value, demonstrate that value back. Showcase the members. You know, one of the reasons why people are becoming a member of the chamber is really to increase their business, whether that's through seminars and meet and mingle events, or through simply advertising and being more of a part of the community. So showcase your members. I think there needs to be improved networking and communications as well. Too often do I see chambers putting on random events that don't really hold a lot of value and don't really collaborate between their members. I also think that chambers need to be more focused on some of the ambassador clubs. Ambassador clubs, and Michael, I'm sure you remember several chambers doing this. I don't see enough of these ambassador clubs where there's loyalty programs in the back end. Lead generation is huge. As a business joining onto the chamber, I expect to increase my business and my presence. So having some sort of lead generation or matchmaking, connecting businesses with other businesses is going to be huge. And to that effect, more of an online, automated, in real time type of matchmaking, and not one where people are relying on the chamber to call them and even email them with some opportunities, but being in real time. We talked very briefly about community and gathering, belonging. I think having forums, this used to be a round table where people would physically sit down. I think an online forum, we again talked about LinkedIn and Facebook. Millennials, or people in general, actually, I shouldn't even say millennials, people in general are going to online communities. So ensuring that we have those types of avenues. Ultimately, though, you need to be visible. I've been in many different communities where I've never been contacted by the Chamber, never even knew that the Chamber really existed without looking and looking hard. So ultimately, be visible, be out there, and continue to build solid relationships.
Michael, what are your thoughts?
You know, Braden, I couldn't agree with you more. I think one of the issues around chambers today is many of them are still too comfortable in where they are, and they don't accept reality. And to me, that's one of the big pieces when it comes to bridging the gap between, you know, the old world, if you will, and the new world. It's accepting reality, and the reality is that the impact on communication that technology has brought is absolutely huge. I mean, and it can have an impact not only with respect to communication with members, but on revenues, on costs, and everywhere. So to me, one of the big pieces is accepting reality. The technology as an enabler is a huge piece to chamber success for the future. And so how do I see that happening? Well, you know, my recommendation is always the same. The chambers seek to embrace technology. And you're absolutely right that you know, if we're talking about how to build membership for the future, the reality is even though millennials may not be a big piece of membership today, they're the coming wave. So the more chambers embrace technology now and look at specific pieces that can impact that. I mean, it can be something as simple as using a hashtag for an event, foreign to many of us that are more seasoned veterans, but the kind of thing that millennials love and embrace and want to do. Things like using polling technologies when you're doing events, member webinars, just like what we're doing now, but giving members the opportunity to share their knowledge. It's what they want to do. And you know, Braden, you're absolutely right. More and more people are becoming at ease with using technology when it comes to communicating online. Now, whether that's a LinkedIn group for the chamber, whether it's a Facebook, whether it's just a peer-to-peer connection group on a particular topic, I mean, I think it's one of the things that chambers need to do more of. They need to do better, and they need to embrace. And that starts off with chamber executives. So to me, the technology piece is what chambers need to look at more, better, deeper, and embrace in order to achieve the success they want and need for the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that one as well, especially hashtags for events. We use it for many conferences and events that we go to as well. Mm-hmm. All right. So driving members and community engagement is a core priority for every chamber. But millennials are notorious to resist traditional methods. How can chambers better identify and exploit opportunities to stimulate millennials, member and community engagement? Michael, would you like to start this one off?
Sure. And you know, this to me is the core of the issue for chambers today in looking at where they want to go. Because if it's all about member development, member renewal, and engaging these new young professionals that are coming in, it's probably more important than ever to understand who they are, what they need, and what they're looking for. So to me, the first thing to do is to have chambers and chamber executives and their boards change their attitude about millennials. I mean, there's a lot of information out there about millennials that you know, they don't belong, they don't participate, they want everything today, and I refuse to believe that. I mean, I've engaged with any number of young professionals today, and I find that they're more engaged, they're more involved, but they are in a different way. And so, as well as, you know, changing the attitude, you know, the second piece I usually bring in there is it's more important today than ever before as a process, not an activity, as a process, to continually ask members and potential members what they want, what they need, and what they're looking for. So to me, one of the success factors for any chamber today and in the future is embracing a strategy of asking members what they want, and that's through surveys. And yes, there's of course the formal surveys, whether it's, you know, can be done very easy today through SurveyMonkey. It can be done through whatever electronic communication form you had to go out on a particular topic. But in addition to that, to me, for every chamber to embrace an informal survey strategy of contacting specific individuals, specific companies, and asking for feedback, asking for information, asking for ideas is a huge, huge opportunity. So to me, when it comes to engaging members, specifically the millennials, it's asking more what they want, how they get engaged. And then the third thing about that is acting on the information they give you. And if we talk specifically about millennials, millennials are not necessarily long-term engagement folks when it comes to a position or a topic. What they do love and what they love to get involved in is project-based activities and ideas that focus on things that are important to them. So to me, when it comes to engaging members and bringing on those millennials as part of the membership you want and need, it's more about having an attitude that's open and taking the time to ask them what they want, and at the same time to engage them in a manner that they want, that they need, that is important to them, and it will contribute to the chamber and their success.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, Michael, I look out the window and we're in Canada, we're the high-tech hub of Ottawa. And the majority of businesses here and even throughout North America now are actually truly run or managed in some way, shape, or form by quote unquote millennials. And all this really is people under 35, under 38, whatever the terminology is. The understanding though is that they absolutely have an increased familiarity and increased use with communication, media, and digital technologies. Your point actually is absolutely right on the money. Even from a sales perspective, you always need to identify who your audience is and what they actually are looking for. And if I look at quote-unquote millennials, some of them identify themselves as communitarians, other libertarians, but does the chamber represent their interests? What you're advocating, what you're lobbying for, the programs that you have in place, are they actually there to attract those quote-unquote millennials? Do you have an inclusion strategy in place? And ultimately that ties back into the value proposition of the chamber. Is it the same as it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago? I hope not. I hope it's changed. I hope it's morphed because the world certainly has. I'm not saying completely pivot, but certainly ensure that your online presence is up to current standards, as well as your offerings, your collaboration approach, and again, an inclusion strategy. Because if you're not with today's standards even, you're missing out on massive opportunities to continue progressing as a chamber. So absolutely couldn't agree more.
Thank you. So business is evolving faster than it ever did before, and it's only getting faster. Are our Chamber of Commerce doing an adequate job evolving to meet the needs of today and tomorrow's business leaders? What do you think, Braden?
I don't see enough being done quick enough. I mean, I've spoken with thousands of chambers across North America. Innovation is not something, it's not a word that I would associate with the chamber. And I think if you poll or survey a lot of people, they also wouldn't tie innovation with chamber, and that's very unfortunate. I look at some of their budget sheets, and they've got $6,000 worth of stamps every year for sending out collateral. Running a chamber, a successful chamber, it takes work, it takes effort, thought, and insight. And I hope that all of the chambers that are on today's webinar have that, because unfortunately I've seen too many that are just keeping it as status quo. So innovation needs to be something that occurs. I don't see enough of it. And Michael, I don't know if you've seen anything different, but again, over my course of talking with over 2,000 chambers, again, innovation is not something, a word that I would associate. Do you also see the same thing from people that you speak with?
Well, Braden, I find the question as it's phrased here is almost, when I look at innovating and evolving, to me it's almost an oxymoron. And what I see when I talk to chamber executives and chamber leaders is that for the most part chambers are evolving, and to me it's a question of you do it by default or you do it by design, and to evolve is to kind of allow the process to manage you. as opposed to you taking charge and managing the process. This innovation word is something too many people see as something foreign, different, that has to do with technology, has to do with the healthcare world and all that. But really, all innovating is and refers to it refers to new ideas, new concepts, and a change. And you know what? Some of the things that the chambers need to become more aware of, we're in a change or die world here. The status quo is just not acceptable. As a general rule, memberships are decreasing by 10% annually. That's not me saying that. That's the reality of business. So there are specific constraints there that are hitting chambers and chamber executives particularly, and so anybody on this call or that listens to this webinar should be acutely aware that it's important and necessary to look for, to identify, and to implement new ideas that will have an impact on you. And so it's all about calculated risk. Now, change is hard. A lot of people don't want to take change. Change is hard, but it's all about taking calculated risks. It's about looking at your chamber, where it's going, the issues that you have, and how to take advantage of them. It's about a strategic approach. This isn't about having you go out and spend $10,000 on a new website, although that may be a good idea. But what about if you were to look at a specific piece of technology that could have a dramatic impact on lowering your costs at the back end with improving the entire management of your back end? Those are the kind of things that are already there in place that you can check with other chambers on. It's not about this huge risk throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's about a strategic approach to invest in specific activities or initiatives and test new options. The definition of marketing is test, test, test. So that's what this is all about. It's about seizing opportunities. And as a chamber executive, you have an obligation to look at your role and to use it to move the chamber forward. Who could you partner with? What members do you have within the scope of your responsibility that you can take advantage? What trends are coming up that you think you should embrace or you want your members to embrace? What topics are timely and could have an impact on the membership? To me, it's all about looking at what needs to happen and moving that forward. And the last piece is to look at these little pieces you're doing and measure their progress. Baby steps toward improving your chamber's progress and profitability so that you can know that you can do the best for members down the road.
Yeah.
What do leading chambers know that struggling ones don't?
We and Michael, you just talked about technology. Although technology certainly helps make life easier, fundamentally it takes work. It takes work, effort, and vision to keep, I'm going to use the word evolving. And I use that because now there's more and more companies that do similar things like chambers, but they're not chambers. So, everyone expects to get everything for free now. Information is readily available, accessible in real time. You need to tailor the value to your audience, absolutely. And with the right resources within your chamber, whether that be technology or that be people, and certainly using technology to make some of the more daunting tasks, be more easier and ultimately lead the change, you can certainly keep on pace with the changing demographic, with the changing landscape. So I am an advocate certainly of technology, but don't be fooled that it still takes work and effort. Technology simply makes that work and effort a little bit easier to do. So the thriving chambers are the ones that are using technology smartly, the ones that know what to do in terms of reaching out to existing members and ensuring that they have proper value, and reaching out to people that haven't heard of the chamber and offering them the opportunity of being a part of that group. But again, it takes work, it takes effort, and I think that's the trick, which really isn't a trick. It's what's been going on for years and years. It takes work and effort, and the ones that are doing it well put in the time, and the ones that are status quo or even struggling just aren't putting in the time and effort.
What do you think, Michael?
Braden, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's like anything else. There's no magic bullet here that a chamber can implement tomorrow morning. There's all kinds of software out there people are trying to flog that says, buy this and you'll triple your revenues tomorrow. Yeah, life just doesn't work like that. And my experience has been that the successful chambers that are out there, the chambers that are thriving or that are preparing for future success, have three specific qualities. The first one is that they have an awareness. They have an awareness of what's going on, of what reality is, and they have an ability to grasp that, to look at it from a perspective, not only from an individual perspective, but from a leadership perspective. They're looking down the road and looking at what they need to do that. They're open to new areas. They have an open mind. They're positive about this kind of, whether it has to do with technology, whether it has to do with direction, whether it has to do with options. Those are all pieces there. So there's an awareness and an openness about this whole new world and seeing it as positive as opposed to something that's negative. The second piece I see is an adaptability. The chambers that are moving forward, that are having success now, have accepted the fact that they need to be nimble. They need to be able to change, to adapt what they're doing. They have a capacity and a willingness to react to new or the changing environment. They're willing to take steps. That's one of the biggest pieces I see out there that I think causes more chambers to have more success. And I think it's one of the pieces that can have the biggest impact. And then the last piece, and it's the biggest message I can give to anyone listening to this call, is a sense of urgency. I mean, this isn't about next year. This is about today. And the successful, thriving chambers that I interact with, that I speak to, have a bias for action. They look at an idea, they look at a concept, they look at an initiative, they look at a project, and they implement it today. You know, one of the most important things I heard a long time ago was a little bit at a time, all the time holds the greatest measure of success. Whether it has to do with technology, whether it has to do with cost containment, whether it has to do with membership, it all works the same. So those are the three pieces I see out there in the marketplace today.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Moving fast and moving now is always a better way for success. So, thank you. For those that don't have time to stick around for our question period, we'll have to thank you for coming. If you'd like more insight on how your chambers can improve its appeal to millennials, business owners, you can get in touch with Michael or Braden through email or LinkedIn at the address provided. We'll also be emailing all participants a link to the recorded copy of this webinar, which you can also find at Member365's archive at blog.websites.member365.com/webinar. We'll now move to addressing questions from our webinar audience. So our first question is, millennials do not want to participate in person. How do we enable them to do so on their phone and device?
And we as Member 365, I'll let you know quickly whether it's using us or using any other platform out there. First of all, connecting through any of your ongoing communications, things such as your newsletters, such as your outreach emails, being able to have that device or that mobile capable. Also, an interaction platform. We mentioned LinkedIn, we mentioned Facebook. Those are all public resources. As a chamber, though, you have to hold something near and dear to your heart. So as a chamber, having your own interactive forum, allowing your members to log in remotely, post questions, post comments, and allow others to chime in. You're developing a business network, and it should be online to reach out to those millennials. I can let you know that we certainly are a platform as well that enables you to reach out both through mobile devices on an ongoing basis, but also through setting up your own online community.
How do you think, Michael, you should engage with millennials?
You know, I think that's an excellent question because, you know, younger professionals today are very busy, they're active, they're moving on, and they're technology savvy. They want their information in real time wherever they are, and they want to have the capacity to be able to respond to that. And yes, there are some open forums that allow you to do that. But remember, if as a chamber you want to offer more value to your members, one of the specific things that you can do is invest in a platform that will allow them to interact with folks that are within your community. Not only does it give them more capacity to be able to connect more quickly, it allows you to stay in the conversation and be more aware of what's going on, get more information, and build your confidence. So, I mean, that's another one of those little pieces that you may want to think about investing in as a next step in the events that you're part of, whether that's a webinar, whether that's a face-to-face event, or some kind of informal group that you want to put together.
Yeah.
Here's our next question. So millennials are masters of social media, but lack the traditional networking skills. What can we do to get millennials interested in developing these skills through chamber memberships?
I would actually disagree with that question. So sorry, whoever wrote that. You know, I fall just outside the range of being a millennial, and I wouldn't identify as someone who lacks traditional networking skills. Having said that, I think there's certainly a bias towards online networking. So having said that, to develop the skills through the chamber membership, I think chambers need to be on top of the ball when it comes to social media. If that means hiring a resource, whether it's temporary, whether it's an intern, to be able to help you with your social media presence, it is where millennials are today. Even us in this webinar, you know, we're blogging, we're hashtagging, we're all over social media right now. It's one of the core drivers today of any business or any association. So if you're not on the ball today, hire someone, reach out to a free resource such as an intern. Get someone involved that can help with your online social media presence.
Yeah, Braden, I think there's a big misconception out there about millennials, and the misconception leads to the fact that either they don't go to events, or when they go to events, they don't seem all uninterested. But the key premise here is that many of those events are millennials, first of all, have a preference for building their own networks. They're quite active, they're proactive in reaching out to folks, and because they can do it on social media, it's so easy for them, so quick, they tend to do it from that premise. The other thing is many of the events that they see either don't apply to them, have no interest for them, or doesn't work for them. So my recommendation to chambers is to rethink the event perspective and perhaps look to create maybe smaller events or unique events that will be of interest to millennials around topic areas, around interest areas that will work for them. Millennials are about three things. They're about finances, family, and fun. And so the more you can focus events on a social nature with folks of at their level, the more they'll want to become involved. The more you pick topics that have value for them, the more it will work for them. So Braden, I'm in agreement with you. It's not that they don't have the skills, but they're a little more refined, they're a little more independent. And you know what? That's not bad. That just means we have to work harder. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, and you're right. It all really dives back into identify your audience, right? Learn who they are. Absolutely. Good.
Yeah, and I just like to say thank you as a millennial myself. I think you nailed it right there, Michael, with getting people engaged. So thank you. Okay, so we have one more question. So are chambers participating in are chambers participants in social media, but we struggle to do so in a way that creates measurable value for our chambers and members. What can we do to address this?
To me, that means that you haven't identified who your audience truly is. So if you're currently participating in social media, doing all the things that you think are the right things, but ultimately you don't see value back. Now, I'm a little confused on the question. Is it that you can't measure the value or you don't see the value? So I'll address both. If you can't measure the value, you need to put those practices in place. So measurement could be attendance to events, whether those are online webinars, whether those are in-person events. You need to be able to measure and track, whether that's how many people responded to your survey, how many people opened your emails, how many people have joined on this year versus last year. You need to be able to measure and put those metrics in place, and I can share those with you after the call as well. If your question is more along the lines of, we're doing all these things, but our members are not finding value from them, that simply means that you need to ask them what they would find of value. Identify who your audience is, identify what they're looking for, and I can share with you that the generals, they want to increase their business. They want to take advantage of services that are offered from you as a chamber. They want to increase their visibility within the communication, and they ultimately want to feel part of a sense of belonging. Those are the general ones, but obviously dive deeper and find out within your community really what are the key metrics that your audience is looking for. That would be my take on it.
Yeah, Braden, you're bang on. I mean, when it comes to social media, it's like any other marketing initiative. It's start with the end in mind, define the results that you want, and then expand your thinking about how to put it in place. I mean, the good news about things like Facebook and LinkedIn is that they're already there. And we think in terms of from a one-dimensional perspective that it's only for advertising our events to the marketplace. But really, when you think in terms of LinkedIn or Facebook, it can be about promoting any of the initiatives the Chamber has in place, sharing good information about members. I mean, there's nothing a member would like to see more than the Chamber advertising their products or the benefits of their products or services. It could be things having to do with initiatives that they want to take advantage of. It's all about expanding your thinking about how to use this and making it a two-way street. How about reaching out to businesses in the community on LinkedIn to have them become members and use that as a way to initiate a relationship with them? There's all kinds of different ways to use this, but Braden, you're absolutely right. It starts off with what do you want to accomplish and then working back from there.
Yeah.
So that's all the time we have for questions, and thank you very much to the audience for providing those for us. If you have any additional questions, again, you can reach out to either one of our panelists. So thank you everyone for coming. We hope that you walk away from the webinar with insights, perspective, and ideas concerning how your chambers can appeal to the next generation of business leaders, millennials. I'd like to thank our panelists, Michael and Braden, for lending their time and expertise. If you'd like to get in touch with either of them, feel free to reach out via any of the methods listed. Don't forget that we'll be sending an email link to the recorded copy of this webinar, which you can find on Member365's webinar archive at blog.websites.member365.com/webinar. This concludes our webinar for today. Thank you for coming out, and we'll see you next time on November 15th for dealing with Chamber's triple threat.